Marcus works logistics just outside Columbus, Ohio. He's 38, married, 2 kids in middle school. Not rich, not struggling, just working. The way most Americans are working. In the spring of 2023, he got the call he'd been waiting 3 years for. A promotion, a real one. His salary went from $52,000 a year to $68,000. $16,000 more dollars every year, starting immediately. That night, he took his wife out to dinner. They talked about the credit card. They'd finally chip away at it. Maybe a small vacation. Maybe a real emergency fund for once. He felt it. That specific relief when the math starts to feel like it might finally work out. That was 2 years ago. Today, Marcus has about $200 in savings. The credit card didn't go down. It moved sideways, a different card, a little bigger. The streaming subscriptions went from 3 to 5. The car lease moved up a tier. The apartment that felt fine at $52,000 started to feel too small. Nothing dramatic, just a steady series of small upgrades that each felt completely earned. Marcus doesn't feel reckless. He feels normal. And here is what should unsettle you. He is normal. His story is the median American financial story, playing out in Columbus, in Phoenix, in suburban Atlanta, in every zip code where people are working hard, earning more than their parents did, and still ending each month wondering where it all went. You got a raise, maybe last year, maybe longer ago than that. You should feel richer. You don't. And I want to say something important before this video goes any further. That is not your fault. There is a reason this keeps happening. A documented, studied, scientifically named reason. And by the time this is over, you'll have the exact words for something you've felt for years but never been able to explain. Here is a number that makes this feel personal. Right now, in 2026, the average American personal savings rate sits at roughly 4.9%. That means for every $100 you bring home, you are keeping less than 5. The rest is gone, most of it on things that felt completely reasonable at the time. And the income side of that equation has been rising. Wages have gone up. More Americans are earning more nominal dollars than at almost any point in modern history. The conventional logic says rising income means rising security. It doesn't. Not automatically. Heading into 2026, a survey found that 48% of Americans said they were more financially stressed than they were at the start of 2025. Up from 43% the year before. And the number one reason they gave wasn't a job loss. It wasn't a medical emergency. It was the cost of day-to-day expenses. Groceries, utilities. The slow-moving squeeze of a life that somehow keeps costing more, no matter how much more they earn. Credit Karma found that nearly half of Americans ended 2025 worse off financially than the year before. Bankrate found that 32% of Americans expect their finances to get worse in 2026, the highest level of financial pessimism in at least 8 years. And a 2025 Harris poll found that 1 in 3 Americans earning $100,000 a year describe themselves as financially distressed. 1 in 3, 6-figure income, financially distressed. This is not a story about not earning enough. Something else is operating underneath the numbers, something automatic, something built into the human brain that the financial industry has almost zero interest in explaining to you. Because if you understood it, you might stop buying what they're selling. We're going to explain it now. It's 1971. A researcher at Northwestern University named Philip Brickmans is working on a problem most economists at the time considered almost philosophical. Why doesn't more money make people permanently happier? The prevailing assumption, the one that still drives most financial advice today, was that more income equals more well-being. Simple, linear, more money, better life. Brickman didn't think that was true. He and his colleague Donald Campbell published a paper with a title almost no one outside academia would ever read. But the idea inside it quietly became one of the most referenced frameworks in behavioral science for the next 50 years. Their core argument: human beings do not experience happiness in absolute terms. We experience it relative to a baseline, a personal, felt sense of what normal looks and feels like. And that baseline adjusts automatically, upward and downward, to match whatever your current life actually is. It doesn't ask permission. It just moves. 7 years later, Brickman ran the study that proved it. Two groups: lottery winners, people who had just come into sudden significant wealth, and accident victims, people left permanently disabled. The lottery winners should have been profoundly happier, the accident victims profoundly more miserable. That's what common sense would predict. Within 1 year, sometimes less, both groups had returned to roughly the same emotional baseline they reported before the event. The lottery winners adapted to their new wealth. The accident victims adapted to their new reality. The scale reset. They called what they'd discovered the hedonic treadmill. The name is precise in a way that lifestyle inflation never quite captures. A treadmill moves. You run. And no matter how fast, no matter how long, you stay in exactly the same place. The mechanism that helped those accident victims survive psychologically, the brain's ability to normalize any new reality, is the exact same mechanism that silently absorbs every raise, every bonus, every improvement in your income before you ever get a chance to bank it. Here is what the treadmill looks like inside a real financial life. You have a baseline, not a number, a texture, a felt sense of what your daily life should feel like, what your apartment feels like when you walk in, what your car feels like when you start it, what dinner out feels like on a Tuesday. Your brain files all of this quietly under one category: normal. When income rises, that texture shifts. The apartment that felt fine at $52,000 starts to feel cramped at $68,000. Not because anything changed about the apartment, because the baseline recalibrated. And here's what makes this nearly impossible to fight on instinct alone. The recalibration doesn't feel like spending. It feels like correcting a mistake, like you're finally living at the level you always should have been at. Behavioral economists call the financial expression of this lifestyle inflation. Some call it the expenditure cascade, the idea that one upgrade creates quiet internal pressure for several more. You buy a slightly nicer car. Now the garage feels wrong. You fix the garage. Now the kitchen looks dated. Each individual decision is completely defensible. The cascade is what's invisible. And the companies that sell you things have understood the treadmill for decades. The luxury car market isn't structured in tiers because of meaningful engineering differences. It's structured in tiers because each one is calibrated to land just above wherever your current baseline sits. The whole architecture is designed to keep you climbing, and to make every step feel like it was your idea. Here's the statistic that makes the treadmill concrete. Studies consistently find that people believe they would feel financially secure if they earned approximately 20% more than they currently earn. Not a fixed dollar amount, 20% more than whatever they have right now. At $40,000, they need $48,000. At $80,000, they need $96,000. At $200,000, they need $240,000. The finish line moves every time you approach it. Not because people are greedy, because the brain was built this way, wired for a world where your position relative to your tribe determined your survival. Relative comparison mattered more than absolute wealth. That ancient wiring is still running. It just encounters a very different world now. Let me put a real dollar number on this. Two people, both 28 years old, both working hard, both doing what they believe is the responsible thing. The first earns $40,000 a year. She doesn't have a lot of room, so she watches her spending carefully. She saves 10% to $4,000, puts it in a low-cost index fund, and doesn't touch it. The second earns $80,000, twice the income. He feels responsible too. But every time his income rose, his spending floor rose with it. The apartment moved up. The car payment increased. The weekends filled in. The subscriptions accumulated. At the end of the year, he saved about 2% of his income, $1,600. 5 years later, she has roughly $24,000 plus returns. He has around $8,000. He earned twice as much. He has a third of what she has. That gap, that $16,000 gap, is not the result of bad math. It is not a character flaw. It is the hedonic treadmill running exactly as designed. The brain adapted, the baseline moved, and the surplus quietly evaporated before it ever had a chance to become wealth. But here is where it gets more expensive than it first looks. Every year you're not investing is a year of compounding you can never get back. That $1,600 he didn't save this year, at a conservative 7% annual return over 30 years, isn't $1,600 lost. It's nearly $13,000 in future value. Gone. Not because he spent it on anything outrageous, because the baseline shifted, the spending adjusted, and the surplus closed before he ever felt it open. Multiply that over 10 years, over 20, and you start to understand why a 2025 survey found that 38% of Americans named inadequate savings as their single biggest financial regret of the year. Not one big mistake. 1,000 small recalibrations, each invisible, each completely reasonable in the moment. The treadmill doesn't need bad decisions. It only needs your spending to keep pace with your income. And your brain will quietly make sure that it does. So what do you do with this? There's a version of this video that ends with a checklist. Automate your savings before you feel the raise. Set the transfer on the day the new pay hits. Give yourself 30 days before any lifestyle upgrade. Those things work. They are some of the few habits that actually operate faster than the brain's recalibration speed. But the more honest place to leave you is here. The hedonic treadmill is not a personal failure. It is a feature of human psychology that predates money by hundreds of thousands of years. Your brain was built to adapt. In every other domain of survival, that adaptation was the difference between life and death. The problem is not your brain. The problem is that the financial ecosystem around you was engineered by people who understand exactly how adaptation works and built their entire business models to move with it. The car dealer who shows you a slightly better trim level after you've already agreed to buy. The retailer who resets your price anchor with every sales cycle. The credit card company that raises your limit right after you pay it down, handing your baseline a new ceiling to grow into. The subscription service that adds one more tier, priced at just the edge of what your current self considers reasonable. They all know about the treadmill. They just don't mention that you're on it. The raises will keep coming. The baseline will keep moving. And somewhere between the life you have and the life the treadmill is always promising, just 20% away, there's a question worth sitting with on a Tuesday night. Did you choose what you're adapting to? Or did someone else set the pace, and you just never noticed the belt moving underneath you? If you made it this far, you already think differently about this than most people do. The topics on this channel aren't about quick wins or market predictions. They're about understanding the systems that quietly shape your financial life, so you can stop being surprised by them. If that's the kind of content you want more of, subscribing takes 2 seconds. I'll see you in the next video.